Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hey Woo Crew! Before we drop into today's episode, I just wanted to come on here and remind you that next week we are live with Root. Root is a 5-day guided journey to reconnect with the parts of yourself that remember who you truly are and who you came here to be. Every day I'll be doing a little bit of teaching and then dropping you into powerful guided journey work so that you can step towards living from a place of worthiness. You'll learn how to tap into your intuition and trust its wisdom, strengthening the most important relationship you have in this life, the one with yourself. You'll walk away from this week with the confidence to live your truths, assert your needs, and claim your desires from an innate sense of worthiness and self-love. My darling, it is time for you to root into your power, into your authenticity, and into your worth. Did I mention it's free? Sign up now at the link in the show notes and come step into your worth with me. Hello, Woo Crew, and welcome back to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, Miranda. Miranda is the founder of Moonstone Creative, a brand and web design studio for women in wellness with over a decade of design experience and a lifelong obsession with astrology. She created the Moonstone Method, a signature approach to branding that weaves your personal astrology into your creative strategy. Miranda and her team help healers, coaches, and spiritual entrepreneurs build personal brands that feel deeply attuned to their energy and magnetic edge so that they can show up, market, and scale with confidence. I am so excited about our conversation today and so delighted to be here with you, Miranda. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me.
It was my pleasure. We had the great pleasure of connecting earlier today on a call because at some point in the hopefully not too distant future, Miranda will be doing some branding for me. And I've been following you for quite some time and really just love the way that you weave astrology into your work. And so I feel like this is going to be a really interesting conversation. And as you are perhaps aware, I will start these conversations by asking a little bit about your journey with spirituality and the quote unquote woo, because mine is that I came to it quite late in life and it's really informed the work I do now, but I'm always so curious about other people's pathways into spirituality. Maybe you've traveled with it your whole life and how it informs the work that you do today.
Yeah, it's a big question. It's a great question. So I was raised in a very not religious household, but my mom was very spiritual. My dad's very scientific. So I have always kind of walked the line between and felt a strong balance between spirituality and very grounded, logical kind of way of thinking. But similar to you, I didn't actually start to really integrate spirituality into my own day-to-day life until a little bit later in life. For as long as I can remember, I've been interested in astrology. One of my earliest memories is laying on a couch in our basement, and my mom had this zodiac wheel. Not even a picture or a painting. It was like a sculpture almost. 3D off the wall. And I was just mesmerized by this thing and just loved looking at the details and the symbolism. And just always was so curious about that, and very curious about the mysteries of the world and all of that. So I always had this like pull towards sort of the occult and mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until about 2016 that I really started to go deeper into understanding my whole chart, really studying the tarot and
Mm.
integrating it into my life in a more intentional way. And it was around that time that I started to integrate it into my work as well. It took some time. I had been a professional graphic designer for a few years and working corporate gigs, working in-house,
Mm.
doing some freelancing, and feeling like there was a part of me that wasn't showing up, and that I was wearing a mask, and that I didn't fit into this corporate office life situation.
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to work with the moon cycle, I started to design moon calendars. I started to talk a little bit more about my tarot practice and all of this stuff. I started to attract a whole new clientele. I started to feel much more fulfilled in my work. I was obsessed with taking courses and learning more, as we were kind of talking about earlier. And I left a toxic relationship. I left a toxic lifestyle. It completely transformed my whole life and got me to where I am here. So it's like I fully drank the Kool-Aid, and there's no going back.
I love that. Yeah. Oh, it's so interesting hearing people's stories because there's so many similarities. Often I was also raised sans religion. We were kind of chatting just in the waiting room before we popped in to record that my mom is probably a witch. She talks to her plants, they do what she tells them. But it didn't actually register for me as like spirituality. I was very that kind of cut and dried, but I was always fascinated by my horoscope as well. And pretty like, it's just, it's so generic. It could apply to anybody, but always being like, but that one feels like more me than this other one that isn't mine. And yeah, that curiosity for me, I didn't get to indulge in it until after I had left the toxic relationship because it was like not allowed in that space. It felt really ridiculed to even consider opening my mind to something more. But I love the way, like, such a small, seemingly small thing. Like, yeah, I got into astrology. It becomes this whole like 180 direction kind of in your life, even though you carried on with the same technical work. It became like something that was purpose driven and let you feel more like you and understand yourself better, I suspect.
Oh, 100%. I look at astrology as a tool for understanding ourselves and each other in the
Mm-hmm.
same way that a personality test, the Myers-Briggs, human design, all of these things are just different ways of understanding ourselves. And for me, astrology is just, it's ancient, first of all, which is
Mm-hmm.
fascinating. And it
Mm-hmm.
shows up in so many different ways. And I can't even begin to explain. It's just, it's a bit mind blowing when you start to dig into it. And then when I started really reading other people's charts, like I'm not an astrologer, I'm a designer who's obsessed with astrology, but
Right.
I started having all these people ask me, like, what's my rising sign? Tell me about me. And so I have all of my friends and family's chart. And, that's what really helped me to learn astrology better as well, is to like view it through the lens of somebody else and get their feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun. It's just such a fun
Yeah.
tool.
Yeah, it really is. And I love that kind of sense of learning about it by experience, almost by like, yeah, pulling somebody else's chart, matching what you know about them to what it's saying, bouncing it off of them, because often what we know about people is just the surface and they
Mhm.
know so much more underneath. And then of course you took that and like wove it into business. And I think that's what's for me about the way that you approach design so unique and so intriguing. When you are working with somebody in the design space, this is a question that I know the answer to, but I want to ask it because I think it's important. And you might have some more to elaborate on. If somebody is coming to you for design for their business, are you working with their birth chart or the chart of their business?
Yeah, so I've experimented with this and I have an astrologer on the team. So it's not just me kind of feeling my way through this. And I've had my method validated by two astrologers that I've collaborated with. And we've talked about this because, depending on the type of business that you have, it might make sense to look at the chart of the business. And when we used to use astrology primarily as an electional, like date selection tool, like when's the most auspicious launch time frame for your business, we
Right.
would cast a chart for the business. But lately, and what's feeling really juicy and fulfilling for me is working primarily with personal brands. So you're the face of the brand. That doesn't mean that your brand name is your name, but you are the one who the brand is known for. And you're the face of it. So in that capacity, I do feel like working with the business owner's chart is the way to go because the brand, we do visual branding and it needs to be a reflection of you. And the big gap that I see is that business owners feel like their brand, when they're in a certain place, they feel like their branding is just not a good fit. They might have pieced something together. They might have worked with a designer previously. And in that respect, there's a lot of questions that designers ask their client to get ideas about what the brand should look like. And
Right.
a lot of times, like, you can only do so much with the answers that you get there. But
Yeah.
astrology tells a whole different story. It tells the story of the
Right.
strengths and the superpowers and the aesthetic preferences and all kinds of things about the person that they may not even really be aware of because they might be
Yeah.
going through something. They might be confused. They might just be drawn to a lot of styles and they don't know why. And that kind of changes with the trends and the season. But in my experience, your chart is a very reliable source of what is going to be true for you in the long run. And so we've
Yeah.
had really great results using the chart as the cornerstone of
Right.
what direction the branding should go in. And people just love it and feel so connected to it. And the top feedback we get on this process is like, this is more me than I ever could have done myself or imagined. So that's always what I'm
Yeah.
going for.
Yeah, no, I love that. It's as you were speaking to, like, yeah, the questions are important and they help. And at the end of the day, a lot of people are going to have the same answers to a lot of those questions, right? Like, again, if you're helping healers, coaches, spiritual entrepreneurs, I help women age 30 to 60, that kind of statement. But the astrology gets to almost the subconscious, right? Like the things that maybe aren't so present or that you're aware of. I think we were talking in our previous conversation. I feel like we should have recorded that one too for listeners. But about, the fish that doesn't know that it's in water. It's in the water. Like that's just its reality. It's in it, but it can't see it. Or as one of my coaches used to love to say, you can't read the ingredients from inside the bottle. And the astrology, the chart is almost like an ingredients list.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love how you put that. And there can also be this tendency to like try to answer a traditional like branding intake questionnaire the way you think you should
You should.
be, or to try to fit in maybe with what other people in your industry are doing. Or sometimes the questions are just kind of vague and hard to understand. And don't get me wrong, like
Right.
we ask a lot of questions, going back to like, always pulling the logical grounded content to get to know the story of your business and balancing that with the astrology. But I find that the chart tells a much more interesting story. And
Yeah.
it, for me personally, as a designer, just inspires and conjures up so much more symbolism and texture and richness. And it's a language. It's a whole other language. And why not tap into it?
Yeah. Oh, this is the first time in an interview and we're like, oh, I almost should have prepared some questions because I feel like I want to know, I want to ask like really good specific kind of example stuff. And then like, if I had done a little bit of research ahead, it might be smoother. And also, I have a decent astrological foundation in terms of knowledge. So I want to like dive in a little bit to, you know, you do branding, you do help a little bit with messaging too. I know in terms of like helping people show up as their most authentic selves, their magnetic selves. What kind of areas of the charts are you looking at when it comes to like, let's talk about like the aesthetic?
Yeah, definitely the rising sign. So the rising sign is how you perceive the world, and therefore how others, if what you perceive, you become. And
Right.
so that's sort of how we end up being perceived by the world. So I feel like most people will identify more closely with their rising sign than their sun sign. I know that was the case for me. Fun fact, I thought my rising sign was something completely different for years until, you know, not that long ago, because my mom had gotten my birth time wrong, and it changes every couple hours. And when I
Yeah.
realized my rising sign was Libra and not Virgo, I was like, oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. So
Mm-hmm.
the rising sign is definitely the first place I'll go when it comes to aesthetics. And the chart ruler sign, so the planet that rules your rising sign, the sign that that
Right.
planet is in your chart, will also flavor the design that we take. So, for example, I'll use just the closest
Yeah,
top
it's
of
easy
mind.
to use you.
My rising sign is Libra. Libra is ruled by Venus. My Venus is in Pisces. So the
Mm,
Libra-ness of my brand style would be leaning a little more watery, a little more patient than, say, if it was in Aries. This would bring a certain
right.
fire into the brand. And this is where, as a designer, I get to have a lot of fun, and it's still quite subjective. Like, everything obviously is going to run through the filter of like my interpretation of the sign. But yeah, like you, I've done a lot of self-study and just have kind of pieced these things together and found sort of the visual examples and inspiration that makes sense for me and the way that I think my unique aesthetic as a designer. So yeah,
Yeah.
rising sign and chart ruler are big for aesthetics.
Right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And this is a question that kind of dropped in as a tangent to that one, but this sense of, you know, you're talking about things very practically. Astrology is a mathematical space, really. But is there also a sense of a bit of like intuitive guidance when you're looking at somebody's chart and thinking about how that design might present itself in visual form?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, every chart is unique, and we kind of need to zoom out and look at the whole thing to tell that full story. So, another personal example is like, yeah, the rising sign and the chart ruler are huge for aesthetics, but I've also got a Scorpio stellium. We can't ignore that there are multiple planets hanging out in Scorpio. So there's
Mm,
something to extract from that. And then the way that we piece these themes together in a way that feels balanced and also very connected to that business owner's industry, what
mm,
their target audience is going to resonate with, and what's going to set them apart, because that's the ultimate goal. Is we want you to
yeah.
be set apart from your competitors. We want you to stand out
Right.
without sacrificing who you are, like leaning so hard
Yeah.
into who you are that you naturally stand out. Yeah, there's a lot of intuition that goes
Yeah.
into that. I think design is a very, like, I don't know very many designers that just follow a formula. Like, I'm actually going through the
Right.
process right now of trying to document my creative process of everything I do, because I got some really great advice from a coach about
Right.
creatives love to blame creative block. There's a quote, I think it's Seth Godin, that coal miners don't get coal miners block. And part
Right.
of being a business owner is knowing your process inside and out and being able to follow
Yeah.
it. So I've always been so intuitive, like intuitive. And I think I've used it almost as a crutch. So I'm trying to be a little more scientific about the process now as
Mm.
well, and get very clear and, dare I say, templated, like, because I do want to create a consistent experience
Right.
for our clients. But yeah, intuition will always be a part of design. And I think the biggest challenge for me, anyways, as a designer, is to not let intuition be what drives the show the whole entire
Right.
time. It's intuition is something that's been like really on my mind lately, like my relationship with my intuition. So it's interesting that
Right.
you asked that. But yeah, it's
Hmm.
definitely prominent.
Now I want to ask more about intuition. That's a fascinating topic for a little detour for us, and relevant to the show is like that sense of, one of the things that I know a lot of people struggle with is listening to and trusting their intuition. And it sounds like perhaps for you, it's almost the opposite. Like you hear it, you follow it, maybe to the exclusion of laying some of those more tedious groundwork pieces, as it were.
Yeah.
So when you say that, your relationship with your intuition is really prevalent right now, can you share with us a little bit about how that relationship feels or what's shifting there?
Well, I,
Only if you want to. That's like
yeah,
a prying question.
no, that's okay. I'm an open book. I think it's incredibly important to listen to your intuition and follow it when it's serving you. It's tricky because you just sometimes know in your gut, in your
Mhm.
heart, like, I need to follow this call. But sometimes our intuition can guide us off course, and we need some kind of like guardrails to keep us, particularly in business, I think, or if you have a
Mhm.
specific tangible goal, like in
Mhm.
health for me. Like, I'm not an intuitive eater. I
Right.
kind of like to think about that a little more logically and have a plan and a goal. And same with like exercise. Like, and I don't really personally, there's nothing wrong with it, but personally, I don't subscribe to intuitive movement because I
Mm.
might not do anything or move the needle
Right.
towards my goals. So there's a time and a place for it. And I think that part of the reason that I've been able to get here is because I have followed my intuition so closely for so many years. And I've seen where it served me. And I've
Mhm.
seen where maybe it, it's, mm, I could benefit from some structure that
Yeah.
can let my intuition kind of take a break and be like, no, this is the goal. This is the plan. We're going to follow the plan and get this thing done. And particularly in business, as a designer, a creative for hire, I
Yeah.
can't just let my intuition run the whole entire show. It's always going to be there. So I need a little bit of support on the other side of things, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, to keep projects moving on time and to deliver what it's saying I'm going to deliver. So, and that's extremely
Yeah.
important to me. So yeah, I think with anything else, it's finding that sweet spot and
Yeah.
creating
Yeah.
systems to kind of support you. And then there's a ton of room for intuition and exploration within the form.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense for sure. And it's almost, there's like a subtle nuance there between, intuitive, yes, no, go this way, don't go that way, and inspiration. And sometimes inspiration strikes and it's great and we can put a pin in it and maybe we get to follow it, but maybe it doesn't actually serve us in the moment, or that kind of shiny object syndrome that can happen if we're a little too much in that feminine flow. The way you spoke about it reminded me of an analogy another guest had brought in that I really loved, and I pull back in every now and then. It's like, the feminine, the intuitive, the creative, that's the river, but we need river banks because otherwise we just end up as a lake.
Yes,
Right? And sometimes a lake is beautiful, but not if you have a destination, not if you need to get to the ocean, not if you have a goal in mind. Then you need those riverbanks, the structure, the more masculine kind of pieces to help keep that energy flow headed in the direction that you want it to.
exactly. I love that. Yeah. And inspiration can be distracting. I know a story I hear from a lot of business owners is with their brands, like they keep changing their colors, they keep changing their fonts, they keep changing their mind. And that's a great example of like, my intuition is telling me I should go this way, but it's like, we need to reel you back in, and like, maybe your intuition could serve you better on like another thing, but like, let's stay focused. So yeah, I love the way you put that. We need a container. We need both. We just need both.
We do. Yeah. And I love speaking to somebody who clearly has like really leaned into the intuitive side, the feminine flow side. And you know, you haven't got where you've gotten to without having some of that masculine structure. But so many of us kind of lean way too hard into the masculine structure. And then I think it's often those people who, when they are, especially if they're healers or coaches in that space, so many of us are working on like letting our feminine lead again. And without kind of the appropriate structures around it, you then get like, well, I intuitively am going here. And you end up a bit almost flaky. It's not exactly the word I want, but you know, that kind of sense of knowing when and how to let your feminine shine. And if you're not a branding expert, it's probably not in changing your fonts every 2 months. I like had this grin because I'm like, I'm trying so hard. But for me, I can see something that I know looks pretty if it's already been put together, but I am shite at trying to create something that looks aesthetically pleasing. That is not my forte. I need to, if I rearrange my room, I have to like try everything in all of the spots until I'm like, okay, oh, there it is. But I can't even begin to visualize that kind of thing without actually seeing it. So that's like magic to me, what you do.
Yeah, it is a little bit of magic, but I've done the same thing. I've, felt called to other colors and other fonts and had that shiny object syndrome with design as well. So I totally understand. And I love what you said about when you see it, like that's the intuition working for you, I think.
Right.
And then it's just a matter of committing to that and letting things move forward.
Yeah. Do you come up against a lot, when you're working with people in terms of that kind of committing? You create palettes, you create variations on branding, I'm sure, and let the client kind of decide which ones feel the most them. Am I correct or am I not?
I am a big fan of the one concept method.
Amazing.
Which takes more decisions off of your plate. So when we're creating a brand, we are playing with all kinds of ideas. Different illustration styles, different color palettes, different fonts, putting them together, taking them away, drawing something new. Like it's a math, like the artboard on my computer is just a mess.
Right.
And
more complicated than the chart.
There's just so much going on.
Chart.
Yeah. And ask any designer. Their Illustrator files are like chaos. And I think that it's my job to narrow that down as best I can into, based on our goals, is going to be the best possible solution. And once in a blue moon, if I'm like, I love both of these things or these three options and I just cannot choose, I'll show you. Like I'll say, you let me know what you think. But most of the time I try to take that over because that can cause a lot of overwhelm for clients.
Totally.
And what happens a lot is they'll want to then take the things they love the most about both things and put them together, which usually doesn't work. So I try to just mitigate that whole situation and show you what I think is going to be the best possible solution. I've worked with agencies and I've experimented myself with multiple concepts, and it's a lot of extra work, first of all, to present that, to present multiple things. But part of what we offer in our signature offer, the brand star chart, is the mood board, the creative direction. So we kind of start signing off on things like colors, fonts, textures, photo styles, all of that stuff before we start designing. So, and because all of it is based on your chart, there's like really no need to go off gallivanting into other design territory. Like it really does keep us focused.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense.
yeah, I try to keep it. My goal is to just take it off your plate and make it easy for you and just hopefully have you fall in love at first sight.
Right.
And of course, there's
Sounds
always
dreamy.
room to refine and we collaborate
Right.
on refinements. But yeah, for the most part, we
Yeah.
just show you one.
That's incredible. And it takes away what I was going to say. Like, do you have issues with people struggling to commit or choose one? And that makes so much sense that it's like, yeah, if you give options, especially to people who aren't trained in design, I think I'd be the first one to be like, well, I like this font, but I also like this font. It's like, but they don't work together. And so that whole aesthetic, it sounds great. Fewer decisions, decision fatigue is
Yeah,
real.
forever.
Yeah.
Less decision fatigue. Yeah, we call it Frankensteining when
Frankenstein.
multiple
Oh, when you're
concepts
like,
get mashed together. Like it's not cute. Not
it's
usually a
not.
good
No,
thing.
I think it's probably what my Instagram looks like right now. It's really not cute.
No
It's,
judgment.
no. I'm trying not to judge myself either. That's the harder part. Is there anything like what's you what's your favorite thing to talk about when it comes to astrology and branding? Or is there anything that we haven't kind of circled around or touched on that is really unique or fascinating to you, or you want to make sure you weave into this conversation?
Mm. I think that what I want people to know about our approach is that your birth chart is not a prescription.
Mm.
It is more of a permission slip to lean
Mm.
into who you really are, and that your brand should express who you really are. You're a personal brand. People want your unique magic. And when we try to fit into a box that isn't us, and I know because I've done this myself, you don't show up. You eventually just stop showing up because
Mm-hmm.
you feel like a fraud. You don't feel lit up by what you're doing. And of course, branding isn't the end all be all solution to feeling fulfilled in your work by any means. But when you lean into who you really are and stop trying to hide it, branding becomes so much more fun. And when you love your brand, marketing your business is so much easier. You're not
Yeah.
second guessing everything you're sharing. You're not worried about, I don't know. I think I just want people, women in particular, to lean into their weirdness, lean into their uniqueness, and let it shine and trust that that is going to yield the best results and bring the right people to them.
Yeah. I love that so much. For listeners, I've been following Miranda for a couple of years now. Actually, since if you've been with me since the beginning, pretty much, of having guests on, you might remember Melissa Armstrong's episode, and her website was designed by Miranda, and that I think is how I found started following her back a couple of years ago. And you've always had this astrology part of your business since you've been in business for yourself, but I know that right now you're kind of doubling down, I guess, or like kind of crafting and creating and going deep in on this one specific offer. And so tell us a little bit more in detail about the brand star chart and how that kind of leapfrogs people into branding and design that is like so uniquely them.
Yeah, I've been telling people I'm going a little bit rogue because we are turning the idea of creative brand strategy on its head a little bit. Anybody who's been through the branding process with a professional designer has probably gotten the document that outlines your target audience and your values and your key messages and et cetera, et cetera. There are various pieces to that puzzle that, depending on your style, you may or may not include. What we're doing with our brand star chart offer, which used to look a lot like that and include your astrology, but it was kind of like different every time, depending on the business. It was a very intuitive process, if you will. Um, we're cutting all that traditional brand strategy stuff out. We're letting that be a conversation and a research process that we go through with you when we first start working together. But there's no need, in my opinion, for, especially with the type of business owners that we work with, to regurgitate that information back to you. Like, you know who your audience is. You know what you offer. You know you've got gold. You know you're making magic. That's not the level. We're not working with the type of business that needs all of that stuff laid out in a PDF document. So we're cutting it all out and we're focusing solely on the business owner's astrology, a few very specific points of the chart that pertain to branding, the way that we see it. And then we're creating a mood board. So we're talking about your astrology and we're talking about your design. And that is the brand star chart. It's an astrologically infused creative direction for your most soul aligned brand. It's allowed us to make the offer much more approachable because brand strategy is a lot. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of research. And it's needed. It's super important. I have all the respect in the world for it and I love it and I'm passionate about it, which is why I did it for so many years. But what I realized is the people that I really want to work with aren't necessarily looking for that and don't get as much value out of it as they get out of what we're offering with the astrology piece and the very visual approach to the creative direction. So that's the brand star chart. It's a creative direction document guided by your astrology. It has lots of visual examples. It basically sets the foundation and casts the vision for what your brand will look like. And then we start designing the brand and actually putting it into action and creating your custom brand asset based on that creative direction. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. It feels really strange and good at the same time to be sort of releasing the need to kind of replicate what every other branding studio is doing with their strategy documents and totally go a different way. But I mean, it feels right.
Yeah. It feels, there's so many things right now that are shifting in the business space, online, in-person businesses. This sense of like, we're done with how things were being done. We need to find new ways to do business and to connect with people and to create and all of that pieces. So it feels like you're like at the forefront of, okay, in the design world, there's another way. This way has worked for this long to some extent, but there's another way that is a little more magic infused and feminine infused, even with the structure there. And I feel like it's such a cool approach to something that arguably I know very little about overall, but
You're going to find out.
I'm going to find out. I'm so excited to find out. So for everybody listening who wants to check out your work, check out these offers, where can they go to find you?
Yeah, so our website is moonstonecreative.co. And you can find me on Instagram at moonstonecreative.co.
Yeah, and of course, those will be below in the show notes. I highly recommend getting on Miranda's newsletter. I love getting it, and her blogs are fantastic. A few weeks back, you put out a newsletter where you listed out the activities to do on each day of the week, and I've gone through all my agendas and like written those down week after week to remind me how to harness the energies of the days, because of course each day is has got its own soul or celestial energy, if you will, as well. And so I've really enjoyed getting your newsletters, and whether or not you need branding, like I'd say get on them.
Time management made magical. That's like one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, it's so good. It's been really helpful for me to let myself off the hook a little bit on Mondays. Mostly that's the day that I'm often like, oh my God, I have to dive back in, and it never works out the way I want it to. And so that kind of shift in perspective, Monday is the moon's day. It's not for nose to the grindstone detail oriented work. It's for dreaming. And I love that. Dreaming and planning and setting things up. And
that's why we named the newsletter Mystic Monday. That's perfect. Yeah. Join the newsletter. We also have a really fun brand tarot quiz. You can grab that on the website or in my Instagram as well, where we'll ask you a few questions and give you a little tarot reading / brand creative direction guide. It gives you a nice little taste of our process, our aesthetic. So that's the funnest way to get on the newsletter rather than just joining the newsletter, which you can do as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how I ended up on the newsletter. And yeah, and of course, all of the links will be below in the show notes. Are there any last words, anything else you want to share with listeners before we wrap up here?
Come chat with me. Come send me a DM. If you have any questions about our process, about astrology, about how your astrology might show up in your brand, if you are just struggling with your brand and want to chit chat about it, like, I'm an open book. I love talking about this stuff all day, every day. So don't be shy.
Awesome. Yes, and I can vouch for that. You're very approachable in the DMs. I've been there. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Miranda. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you today. And for all of the listeners, make sure you go give her a follow on Instagram at Moonstone Creatives. Go check out the website, moonstonecreatives.co. Get on that email list and reach out with questions. As always, if you like this episode, please leave a rating, review, like, comment, subscribe, whatever is applicable on whatever platform you're listening. And I'll see you back here again this time next week. Bye for now.